just was spinning it. There we go.
There you go.
All right, welcome to episode 14 of the Retro Barroom Podcast. And today we have a local bed and breakfast owner, among other things, Rebecca Gallagher, who is our guest. And we're, like we do all the time, we're going to let her sort of introduce herself, tell what she wants to, and then we'll start asking her questions.
Sounds
all
good.
Yours. Go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, thank you guys so much for having me. This is like the coolest podcast in town, and I'm just glad to be worthy to be a part of it.
Yeah, anybody's worthy.
Well, so a little bit about me. My husband, Dave Gallagher, and myself bought the historic Smithton Inn Bed and Breakfast like 13 years ago. I just realized that it was June 23rd of 2009 when we bought the bed and breakfast.
Now, before you even get any further, you didn't even live around here. Mm-mm. So what possessed you to say, I'm going to buy a B&B in Pennsylvania?
Yeah. So we were living in Texas. Yeah. Both of us are from the Northeast, though. So I grew up in upstate New York. Dave grew up in New Jersey. Our careers are what took us to Texas. Okay. And I mean, it was great. We had a big house, a sailboat, a swimming pool, good school district. We didn't, but we both wanted to get back north, close to family, old friends. Okay. Yeah. Every time we would come back home for a family visit, we'd be like, oh man, we'd leave looking at real estate. And so just before we bought the B&B, Dave had come up to New Jersey for a soccer reunion type event. Came home looking at real estate and saw the Smithton Inn was up for sale. And it had been for sale for years, but the price had been significantly higher. Oh, okay. And then as time passed, the economy up here wasn't doing as great. Down in Texas was doing fine. And the inn just kept falling further and further into disrepair.
Right.
So by April of 2009, Dave's looking at it. He's like, hey, I looked at this before and now the price has gone to here. Maybe we could afford it. And so it just so happened that I was coming up for a wedding. So I came and I looked at it. So when we bought the bed and breakfast, it was, again, about to go into foreclosure.
And in disrepair.
Very, squirrels living in the attic. Roof leaks. Yeah. And again, from a guest point of view, it wasn't so bad. It was all behind the scenes, the stuff that was a disaster. But anyway, we bought that sight unseen for Dave. He did it on my say so.
Okay.
Which is a little bit scary. Very brave guy, especially since my risk threshold and his risk threshold are very different. Yeah. So for the first 2 months, what we ended up doing is, so we bought the B&B. We ended up selling our house in Texas in 30 days for asking price. It sold really quickly. Right. But we waited till the end of summer to close on the house. Dave and Patrick stayed in Texas. Patrick got to play baseball for the whole summer with his buds because the house was in disrepair. So I was up here. My dad came and stayed with me and helped do a lot of the renovations. And the object of the game with everybody is that needs to be done before Dave gets here. Dave cannot see that.
If he saw that and knew I bought this,
oh my God! I'm don't make me get divorced. So no, it was great, and of course, there's such great contractors around here. So we were able to really make some big impacts. I mean, a lot of it was just decluttering and new paint and throwing away a lot of stuff and taking stuff to Goodwill. A lot of donations. It was so. Right away. I mean, we bought the house on a Tuesday. I think on Friday we had our first guest.
Oh, really?
And so, and we just continued to work through and fix things as we went along. We've been doing Fixer Upper since 2009.
I'm sure older place like that. I know Dave has talked about, and so you about trying to keep you got to repair the floor, but you want to try to, keep the integrity of the original house. So that's got to be a challenge. It's not running to Home Depot and getting a bunch of
new boards.
New boards and throwing them down. No, because that's a whole different world.
There's some, and again, recognizing that this building, it's over 260 years old. So, having owned it now for 13 years, there's things we're fixing now that we replaced
Oh,
13 years. I mean,
okay,
like
yeah.
hot water heaters,
Yeah,
air
yeah,
conditioners,
right.
I mean, we just replaced a hot water heater that was, the date on the outside of it was 1989.
Oh, okay.
You
Yeah,
know,
well,
you know, so
you got
like,
your
again,
money's worth out of it.
got our money's
Yeah,
so, but a house that old,
Yeah.
it's just, it's
Yeah.
nonstop. There's,
right.
but you're right. And when we did renovate things, like some of the big stuff we had to do, again, I mean, there were no gutters.
Oh yeah.
The windows leaked like a sieve, and just made the sound from outside. The
Yeah.
noise was terrible.
Mhm.
So when we replaced the windows, we put in new Anderson windows, double
Mhm.
pane, double hung. But the trim around the outside, you would
Mhm.
never know it from the street, but it's AZAC.
Yeah.
It's that
Okay.
plastic.
Oh,
Ah.
okay.
So you're not having to like paint it.
Right.
It's not chipping. It's
And
not
right.
splitting
warping,
and
yeah,
warping.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so the windows all open
Right.
nicely for
Yeah.
our guests. It makes safety hazard, when you can't open a window.
Yeah.
Any opportunity we got, we would insulate.
Okay.
So we've got some spray foam insulation in
Mhm.
places. So definitely looking for longevity, durability.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And you
It's important.
talked about the noise because you're located right at Academy and 322.
Yeah.
So you're having 322 right there. We've been through your place, and I'm telling you, the rooms next to 322 are very quiet.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Well, that's big wall. I mean,
It's 18-inch
yeah.
thick walls, but the weak spot would have been
The window.
the windows.
Yeah.
And the really wild anomaly. Normal street noise, it keeps out completely. I mean, if a
Right.
Harley Davidson goes by or
Yeah.
somebody's using their jack brakes,
Right,
it's
yeah.
all the game's up, and
Right.
you're going to hear that through
Right.
the door, through the windows. But normal street noise you can't hear, except you can totally hear the clippity clop of a horse.
That
Oh,
was yours.
So like something about that frequency,
yeah.
Yeah.
it makes
It
it through the
goes
window.
right through.
It's like the
Yeah.
best thing
Yeah.
ever.
No, that's not the worst thing you could ever do.
No, it's awesome.
So when you bought it, it was obviously set up as a B&B,
Mhm.
and was it operating as one up until the last owner basically stopped doing anything?
Yeah.
So that, I mean, but how long did it sit vacant or not in operation between the prior owner and you guys buying it? Like,
So it's very interesting. Well, not a day. I mean,
so it was an operating
It was
B&B
an operating
up
B&B.
until the day you bought it.
Yeah.
See, I thought it was like because I was curious how you managed to have a guest the same week you bought it if it had been sitting there not operating for many years.
Yeah,
But,
no,
okay.
but barely.
Okay.
I mean,
But-
it was so. The house was built in 1763 to be a tavern.
Okay.
So it was a stagecoach stop on the
Okay.
route from Harrisburg to Philadelphia.
Right. Okay.
At some point in like the 1850s, and by the way, it stayed within the same family,
Oh, okay.
generation after
Yeah.
generation. But in the 1850s, that owner, it was Israel Erb and his wife. So it went from being the Henry Miller Tavern, and in the Miller family, the Miller was a daughter.
Okay.
So there's people in town now who will call that Erb's Corner,
Oh, really?
based
Oh.
on Israel Erb and his wife
I'm
Maria.
assuming they're fairly old people.
They're gone.
No, but I mean the people
Yeah,
that still
those
call
people,
it
yes,
that. Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's-
Good
Not
point.
that I'm not an
Sorry.
old person.
So then it stayed within the Miller family all the way until 1979. And Carrie Garber was that owner. Her husband and children had both predeceased her. And there are people in town who remember Carrie Garber.
Okay.
And when she passed away, of course, there's no one to inherit.
Right.
The house went up for auction. Horse auction. It was one of their earliest jobs.
Oh, really?
So horse auction,
Okay.
auctioned it off. I'll meet people who went through it at that time,
Yeah,
who were like, "Oh, Rebecca, it was in bad shape."
Yeah.
And so Alan Smith bought it. So
Okay.
he was an artist and an architect.
Okay.
So he took this house that, I mean, it's a big building.
Right. it
And,
is, yeah.
Like those big old buildings, sometimes they get turned into multi-unit apartments. And
Yeah.
he bought it with the intention of making it a bed and breakfast.
Okay.
And being an architect, I mean, he was the right guy to do it. So all new wiring, all new plumbing. Figure the original house didn't have a single bathroom.
Right.
Right? It would have had
I
an
know.
outhouse in
Yeah,
1763.
Yeah.
So every guest room has a
Right.
bathroom. So yeah, he did amazing things. And he owned it for around 30 years. And then Dorothy Grable was his business partner. And then at the end of his life, he made a deal with her. If you take care of me while I'm dying, I'll leave you then. So they got married. She
Okay.
left, and that's how she came to be the owner of the inn.
Okay.
And that's how the name became the Smithton, because Alan Smith had an ego the size of a small country.
Oh,
Okay.
And so
Okay.
he named it after himself.
Okay. Well, hey.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? I mean, it was pretty impactful stuff. I mean, there's
Yeah.
those doves that are on the side
Yeah.
of the
all that.
building. I mean, he painstakingly renovated that building and turned it into something that just has fantastic bones. I mean,
Right.
look at the buildings around here, the historic buildings in Ephrata, just in my time, that have gone away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that the Hampton Inn site, you know, the
Mhm.
Mountain Springs. I mean, that was
Yeah.
on the National Registry of Historic
Right.
Places.
Yeah.
You know, you let these things start to slide. So, you know, his coming in and renovating it made it so by the time I came, I mean, we've spent more money renovating the house than we paid for it. But we were able to,
Yeah.
you know, as opposed to that building that was at the corner over by Wellspan Hospital
Oh,
Oh,
they
yeah.
tore down.
that they tore down.
Yeah.
That's another historic
Yeah.
building in town. So, you know, unless you stay on top of it, you know, I mean, either it's
Goes
going to be
away.
owned, these buildings are going to be owned by somebody really, really wealthy for whom
Right.
money is no object.
Right.
It's going to be a museum. So the state, for whom money has no
Right.
object,
Right.
is
Yeah.
running
Yeah.
it, or it's got to be a thriving business.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and then everything's always changing. So, you know, in the time that we've owned the place, when Dorothy owned it, there was no Wi-Fi in the house.
Okay.
So of course we put in wireless,
Yeah.
and we fought with the wireless for years, boosters and
Right.
doing whatever we could to get it
Yeah.
going. Finally, recently, we hardwired that entire building for internet
Yeah.
so that it is crazy good inside and outside.
Well, and that's why I plug that into my TiVo box, so we're hardwired, so I don't have to depend on my Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi.
Yeah,
So now
yeah.
you know exactly what I'm
Yeah,
talking about.
yeah.
So every TV in the entire B&B is hardwired. So you could, every guest could be watching Netflix at the same time,
And it's
Zoom
not
calling,
gonna
and
interfere
it's
with
not
each
gonna,
other. Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
But if we hadn't done that, so it's not just physical repairs, but it's staying up to date with the tech. I mean,
Yeah.
when we bought the inn, there weren't TVs in any of the rooms.
Right.
So
right.
we hardwired the whole house for just cable television.
Yeah.
And now we've switched over to internet
Yeah.
TV.
Yeah.
But, you know, you're constantly having to evolve and adapt. You know, COVID certainly, that was
yeah.
that was a whole step change of evolving
Yeah.
and
Well,
adapting.
that was. I mean, everybody took a hit with that.
Yeah.
No doubt.
But I mean, you know, it forced some good changes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even in my trivia, like I would have never, like I used to collect all the answers at the end of the round, go off, correct them. And when I went back after COVID, I figured people ain't going to want to have their answer sheet rubbing against them. So I leave everybody correct their own, and it keeps the game moving. It keeps everybody focused, and it goes a lot quicker. And I don't have people cheating, and I would never go back to the old way. I
Isn't
would
it-
never go back to the old way.
That's a good example.
Yeah, but but some things did change for the better.
Yeah.
It sucked while it was going on, but
You know, I joke around that it's like it's a book, like a really
Yeah.
cliffhanger book.
Yeah.
It's an intense
yeah,
book.
yeah,
That if you could just read the last page,
yeah, yeah.
it would have saved you a lot of stress, a lot of binge eating.
yeah. But you learn, you know, you fought through it, and you learned, you adapted, and some of those, like you're saying, some of those adaptations are still in use today when they wouldn't necessarily have to be, but they worked out for you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the way we serve breakfast in the morning to our guests. So I love to cook. And so even through COVID, I mean, there was a stage where I would maybe deliver guests breakfast to their room.
Okay.
You know, when we first reopened,
Right.
people didn't necessarily feel
Wanna
comfortable
hang-
being in a
hang in the-
dining room.
yeah.
So we had to invest in a lot of, you know, deliver food to room
Right,
supplies.
Right.
But once people started feeling comfortable coming back to a dining room, they still didn't necessarily want to sit at a table with somebody else.
Okay.
So in the past, you know, we have 4 tables in our dining room, and you would possibly, depending on the time you ate, because we have flexible breakfast
Right.
times, so you might have sat next to somebody else.
Right.
We don't do that anymore.
Okay.
So, and I think the reason is because, I mean, maybe some people like sitting next to strangers, and it can be fun. And
Well, and to be honest, we only in my later adult life did we start using B&Bs. And the first time I went to one, in my head, that was the thing I feared, is going to breakfast
Yep.
and having to sit with people I didn't know.
yes,
Then after I got used to it, it's okay. But I would rather sit at my own table and eat and have people over there eating and be able to talk back and forth,
And
but
that's
not necessarily sit there and eat with them.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So that is exactly what COVID brought us to. And because I can see that people are so much more comfortable with it, I'm like, I don't think I'm going back.
Well, yeah. Why force something on them they don't really want? Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
it's
that's-
totally worked out great.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of things like that small changes that we've just kept.
Yeah. Well, now I saw recently you turned your old living quarters into more B&B space. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we applied for a zoning variance. My husband's got soccer knees. He played soccer his whole life, and we're living on the third floor of bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
And so soccer knees and forget the keys, forget the phone, like the
Oh,
up and down the stairs. And I can just blame it all on Dave's knees, but of course it took a toll on me too.
Yeah.
It was like having a stairmaster. You're always going up and down and up and down. And so we ended up applying. We owned the house next door.
Right.
We had purchased that years ago
Okay.
and turned it into sort of a vacation rental property. So
Right.
it was a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath little bungalow. It's cute as
Right.
could be. Has a fenced in backyard. But we were thinking that it would be nice to have the ability, if the time ever came, to move next door
Right.
to that house. And so we knew we needed to apply for a variance to do that. So we did. And the variance was granted. So, I mean, it's the adjoining property. There's a
Right,
gate
yeah.
in the fence.
Yeah.
I mean, we're right next door. Plus, there's great tech. So we're very connected to our guests via text messaging
Right.
and things like that. So we knew we had the capability to still maintain the level of customer service, customer communication, all of that,
Now,
while being next door.
I mean, the zoning originally made you live in the B&B.
So that's exactly it. So there was a rule that either the owner or a manager needed to live on site.
Okay.
And so the variance was that we had to live next door.
Okay.
So we can't just live anywhere.
Right.
Like-
Although that I guess is depending on the borough, the township, whatever. Because I've stayed at B&Bs where the owner would be there in the morning and say, "Hey, if you need me, call me. I live down the block, or I live in the next town, or wherever."
Absolutely.
So that's not a B&B rule. That's an
effort.
borough or
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, different.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you went to other municipalities, it
would
could be different.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So that freed us up to basically take this space that we had been living in and make it, so basically it was a swap.
Yeah.
We had the house which we rented, and now we
Yeah.
have the third floor.
Right. But now you
which
don't have to
are-
go up steps.
Now we don't have to go up steps, and I'll tell you what, the rooms are gorgeous.
I saw pictures of
The
it.
ceilings, it's that vaulted, just the light up there. I'm a fixer upper. I mean, buying the bed and breakfast in need of repair was
Right.
kind of fun for me.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, so yay, I had another project.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, it's really gorgeous space. We just, both of the guests just checked out of it this morning, and both were just raving about how wonderful it is. And
Well, that's good. Yeah, I did see pictures of it.
so
It
so we've been getting some really good,
Well,
feedback
and
from the people staying up
And
there.
seeing in your rooms are beautiful. The beds are wonderful, and is either most or all the rooms have fireplaces.
Every single room. So all of the rooms have a working fireplace, and our insurance company copes with that because we use Duraflame logs.
Oh,
So it's a real wood fireplace, but we put in a fire log, and you just light the paper, which is good. You don't want
Yeah.
it so complicated and
Right,
having to
no.
stoke it and futz with it.
and then it gets smoky because the guests really don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's still that. But and then one room, one of the rooms upstairs, the third floor room, the Smithton loft, it had a wood burning stove when we bought the inn, but that was the room that became my son's bedroom.
Okay.
We're like, no good can come of a wood
Yeah.
burning stove in
Yeah.
a 12-year-old's
Kids'
bedroom.
room. Yeah.
So we took out the wood burning stove, and so when we were renovating it back to be a guest room, our thought was to put maybe a new wood burning stove with like a glass front on it, a new fireplace, do something.
Right.
And it, like, operating those things is actually a little complicated.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, well,
and anything beyond open the flue and light the log
Right.
is too much for a guest.
Right.
So
right.
we ended up buying a really snazzy electric insert.
Oh.
And so
So you just gotta
the
flip the
Smithton
switch.
loft has an electric fireplace, which at first I was feeling like that was going to be a bummer, like for guests.
No, that makes
Well,
it
they're
easy.
nice.
Yeah.
And then that's the only room that can use the fireplace in the summertime.
Yeah, for
You
just
know,
ambiance.
just
Yeah.
because it's got that vibe
Yeah,
that
yeah,
it's just soothing and
Yeah.
comfortable. So
Yeah.
I don't know. In my head, I'm like, maybe I should turn a couple others into electric. I don't know. I mean,
Maybe you just thought of like, well, enough alone. For,
and then there's that.
And your thoughts on eating with other people? Mine was I want my own bathroom.
Oh, that's a definite. I don't want to
bathroom.
share a
I
hall
don't want to
bathroom.
share a bar.
Yeah.
And the bathrooms you have are like very high end.
Yeah,
The
they're
showers
not even
are-
tiny.
They're
Yeah.
they're huge, and the showers are glass, and it's like a high end
Yeah.
hotel.
So that is a rule, I think, countywide. Every guest room has to have a private bath. It may not necessarily be in your
Right,
room.
but if
Some
you
of them you have to go out a door.
but-
So ours is a private in-room
Okay.
bathroom, which I love.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure that's when you bring that up. If I'm looking at a B&B and it says shared bathroom, with, I ain't going there.
I think that's rare.
Well, it
I
probably
don't
is
know
big,
how many of those there are these days.
I mean-
It's the same thing like in the old days, B&Bs, like no televisions.
Yeah.
Like I think that's kind of gone away.
Yeah,
People need to
yeah.
watch their CNN in the morning when
Yeah,
they wake up.
Right.
So
I mean, unless you're going on some theme vacation that you want to live like they did in the 1800s.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Everybody expects creature comforts,
Yeah.
whether it's a bed and breakfast or a hotel or whatever.
Exactly.
It is.
Yeah. And now you have, so a guest comes in and they sign in, and you have a whole list of things that they can do, get involved in the effort area.
Oh yeah. So we've been doing this for a long time now. We write blogs.
I saw your
kind
burger
of
blog.
so they serve two purposes. One, I try to write a blog about anything that guests are asking me.
Okay.
Like, hey, it's raining out. What should I do?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Where can I go for the best?
I couldn't tell you how many times I've been somewhere that I've asked that exact question. Like,
Yep.
Okay, so what's around here? And so many people are like, wow, I don't really know.
Oh yeah. So I've got blogs on everything. So one of the blogs that definitely was guest driven and kind of timely recently is I finally realized, like around here Sundays can be a bit dicey for like things to do or places to eat.
Mhm.
Like a
Yeah.
lot of good restaurants are closed on Sunday.
Right.
Well, then since COVID, it's become Sunday, Monday.
Yeah.
So I wrote a blog and once I started going through and figuring out who's open, I was actually surprised at how many places are open.
Right.
But it's just not
well, and I
quite
think
as
what
obvious.
happens is the places you're used to going to, they're closed, but you never really explored. Same with me. Like I know the Lincoln House isn't open on a Sunday.
Right.
I know Boniface isn't, but I never really take the time to go and explore what is open. I
Right.
just take it for granted they're not open.
Yeah, so I've got a great list of, I think it's 25 restaurants that are open Sundays and Mondays. So I've got, open Sunday, but not Monday, open Monday, but not Sunday, open Sunday, Monday.
That's what we found out when through COVID and finding out if one is open or not is they never changed their website. So when they say that
It's
they're open,
hard
they're
to
not
stay-
open. You have to go to Facebook and
Call.
call or go to their Facebook
Yeah.
page, and then the Facebook page is different than the website, like where they are.
Which one do you trust?
Yeah, they actually are closed.
Yeah.
It's very confusing.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, so we try and stay on top of that. We've got a couple of blogs, and then there's things that I've started to learn too, like guests love covered bridge tours. We've got 28 covered bridges in Lancaster County. So I took all of the covered bridges, put them into like loops. And
Oh,
I mean,
so
and
like
there's books. I mean, there's a lot of places that do
So
that.
instead of a pub crawl, it's a covered
It's
bridge.
covered bridge crawl,
Yeah.
but it's so you can efficient loop of covered
Yeah.
bridges to hit. But then I combine that with what restaurants are nearby and what ice cream places are nearby.
Okay. Yeah.
So you can do a thing.
You can look at your bridges and stop.
I've got, things to do in Ephrata, things to do in Lidditz, things to do in Mannheim, downtown Lancaster.
Yeah.
A lot of people think Amish, but downtown has got a lot of great stuff going on.
Yeah.
And then the food blogs, everybody, I have a blog for all of the restaurants in Ephrata. Favorite restaurants in Lidditz, favorite in, so going by place. And then I started working on types. Like, so so you'll see a lot of my Facebook feed is like me eating burgers.
Oh,
And it's
yeah,
not
yeah,
like
yeah.
I don't
It's not
like
a
other
bad job.
food,
It's not
but
a
when I
bad
was
job.
working on that
Yeah.
blog, I
Yeah.
needed to go to all these places.
Yeah.
So
That's-
so I mean, and there are some great burger places. Oh my God.
Mhm.
And so that was a fun one.
Yeah.
Going around to
Yeah.
all the burger joints.
And then that's a write-off because you're doing business.
and then all of it's a tax right out. Yeah, I mean,
that's
of
not
course.
a bad gig.
Yeah.
But also saves you, like, I assume all these blogs are accessible through, like, if somebody goes to the Smithton website to book a room,
Yeah.
they have access to this
Absolutely.
ahead of time, hopefully relieving you of the burden of answering all these questions to everybody that shows up over and over and
Well,
over.
and it's easy too, because if you're on the road, I mean, once I list the fourth thing to do in intercourse, you've forgotten it, or I've got my 15 favorite Amish owned stores.
Right.
Well, I mean, you just want to have it on your phone so you can go from store to store. So it makes it convenient. So it's convenient for guests who are there, who want concierge sort of ideas.
Right.
It's also a great, like, if you're searching for where to go, where to stay, or things to do, like I've decided I'm going to go to Lancaster, but I don't know what there is to do.
Right.
When you're searching these things, and then hopefully you decide to stay with us.
Yeah.
So it helps entice
because
people.
you're the site that gave them the information.
Yep.
That may be enough to sway them. Well, why don't I just go stay at this place?
But the third group, and this is the group that all of the locals. I don't know if you guys well, you and I, we went down we played tourist one weekend.
It was Easter weekend.
Oh yes,
Remember.
you did.
That was
and I got to admit,
here we are. You've born and raised here, and you hadn't been to Kitchen Kettle Village.
I've never been. No.
See, look at that. So
No.
there are some amazing things to do.
She took us to a little popcorn place in New Holland in some little back road somewhere. Then there was hidden.
Emma's popcorn.
It was popcorn. But that's all they did, and they had 100 kind of different popcorns, and you could taste everything. Well, this is cool.
Yeah.
How did I know this was here? Like, and the ice cream places and and all the hammy and Amish stuff. We just never. Where you go to Walmart or you go to Home Depot.
Yeah.
We spent the weekend with them, and it was too cold to be outside. Like, well, let's do a trip. And have you been here? And like, no. Well, they did one of these circles, and
yeah. So if you're a local, I mean, it's like, pro tip, if you're a local in Lancaster, first of all, there are so many people in Ephrata who are like, why do people come to Ephrata?
Yeah.
Like, why would anyone ever come here? This is a great town. There is so much to do.
Yeah. But I guess that would be the mindset of anybody in the town they live in their whole life.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like
this is a tourist destination. There is so much to do, so many wonderful indoor things, outdoor things, cultural, theater, restaurants, hiking, biking, really great stuff. So the pro tip for the locals is go to our blog, go to a bed and breakfast's blog, pick one, and see what they tell their guests to do.
Yeah.
Because
99% of the time it's stuff you yourself never did living here.
Right.
Because you do the same thing over and over and over.
Take a weekend and go to Intercourse or go to Bird in Hand or do one of the 5 covered bridge loops. You're bound to see something that you haven't seen before.
Yeah.
You know what? We've got a lot of great rooftop restaurants. Like one of the blogs I just recently did has, I think, 42 restaurants with outdoor dining.
Okay.
So if anybody goes and looks at that blog and knows of new ones that aren't on there, I want it comprehensive.
Okay.
But then I have it broken out by outdoor dining with a view. So like the John Wright restaurant, the Exchange, Telus 360, all of those. Fine dining, outdoor. So like the Belvedere has outdoor dining, things like that. Gibraltar has outdoor dining. But then I go by town. So if you're in Ephrata, that way, and again, thinking of our guests,
right?
You're in Lidditz shopping, but you feel more comfortable eating outdoors rather than in. That you can quickly, easily look up that.
Go to Corryville.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but and we're always adding. That's the nice thing about blogs, versus websites. You talk about websites not being updating.
A blog is
it's actually pretty easy for me to go in and update.
Send rather than go in and manipulate your website all the time.
Yeah,
that is even in today's technology, that is a tedious thing. Like not a fun thing really.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is easier to do a blog and just, add it to the collection. And,
But it's so fun for me. Like, I mean, again, I think one of my advantages with the bed and breakfast was that I was an
gonna
out of
see what
towner.
that thing says there.
Oh, it's saying something.
Your battery, something not plugged in.
Oh.
Continue on.
Yeah.
So
Here's why
one of
batteries
David
are-
and my advantages
We're
coming
good.
coming in from out of town. Everything was new, having to discover it, not taking anything for granted.
Yeah.
And I remember one example was that early on, Patrick was young. My father was in town visiting, and I decided we were going to go and do like Strasbourg. Let's, go to the railroad, the museum, the choo-choo barn. Like, let's do
the whole deal.
the stuff that's going on down there. And so we told everybody we're one of the things to go to was the choo-choo barn, this model railroad.
Right.
And I remember hearing my dad walking out of the house. Your mom is making us go to a baby place, right?
Yeah.
Because the name kind of sounds like a kid place.
Yeah, we're going to look at a toy train.
My God, I couldn't get a single one of them out of there. They went around the thing 2-3 times. Like, so I think there's some misconceptions as well that.
Oh, and I'll admit I would. That would maybe be my mindset.
Yeah, same thing. Like, so things to not ignore down in Strasbourg.
Yeah.
The choo-choo barn and the Model Railroad Museum.
Okay.
It's awesome. Like, really cool stuff.
Yeah, and yeah, you're right. But local people tend to, I think, just shy away from what they feel is a tourist area.
Yeah. You're like too cool for school. That's a tourist thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, or just I don't know that really interests me. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't know because I never went. It very well might interest me.
Yeah.
Kitchen kettle was exactly that for me. I drove by it how many times?
Yeah, and thought, why would I want to go there?
And you took us in there, and there was a wine tasting thing that we walked. We were on the second floor of this place tasting. It was fantastic.
Watching them make fudge.
Yeah.
Like, there's all those live demonstrations and live music. In the summertime, there's live music outside at Kitchen Kettle.
Yeah. And although it was full, there was plenty of room to get around. We really didn't feel like we were squished in anywhere.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so at some point you have the end, you have your blog, and then you've expanded into the wine.
Yeah. So we have a wine bar too. So again, getting back to those early days of fixing up the bed and breakfast, and there's a time where it was just repairing the structure of the building. And in my head, I thought, well, we'll finally be able to be profitable once we finished fixing it up.
Yeah, you don't have
and
all
once
these
we
bills.
finished all those major fix-ups, you realize that the cash flow still isn't really here. This is our electric bill in the month of January. Well, we have it on balanced billing. Our electric bill is $3,500.
Well,
It's crazy money. It's a lot. And and again, every year there's big expensive things breaking.
Right.
You can count on 20 grand worth of just normal repairs. It's far outside of the realm of owning a house. So you can see why people just abandon it, and then it falls into disrepair, and then it gets destroyed. So so we realized, you just need every single thing. Like, what else could I do in this property that's suited to the property to make a little bit more money? And we had this living room. And if you think about a living room at a bed and breakfast, it just didn't get used very much.
No, and that's everywhere. Any bed and breakfast I've ever been to has this room with books and seats, and nobody's ever in it.
Nobody's ever in it. And one of the reasons, I think, is because once one person's in it, it becomes like their space.
Yeah.
Like then it's all of a sudden you're uncomfortable going in there.
Right.
So you avoid it. So basically, along the way, there was a high school friend of mine who opened up a winery in New Tripoli. And Dave and I reconnected with them after years of not seeing them. And we used to go on Sundays after we were done serving our guests breakfast in the morning. We'd go out to New Tripoli and drink wine with Rick and Dana, and just had a great time. And then one day I had this brainstorm. And we used to joke like, hey, we should just build a wine tasting room in our back garden. But that's expensive.
I'll tell you, that joking often leads to actual things.
Well, it does. And so at some point I realized, wait a second, we've got this living room that's really kind of untapped space. It wouldn't cost as much to renovate the living room to turn it into a bar as it would to build a whole building.
Right.
Sort of like Black Forest did, with the whole building.
Mm-hmm.
So so basically, figured out what we needed to do. I was friends with Tony Kokoski. He's a local lawyer. I was like, Tony, what do I need to do?
Yeah.
And he kind of walked me through it, talked with Nancy Harris, got again, we needed a variance,
Right.
like lots of variances in that
But
property.
and I'm only, again, I'm assuming this, and you can correct me, but because it's an off-site tasting place for the home winery, you yourself don't really need to invest in some sort of big liquor license.
Correct. It's the way the craft wineries, breweries, distilleries, Pennsylvania is trying to promote agriculture in Pennsylvania business. And so when you open a winery, if you think about it, if you go to the grocery store and you see a bunch of bottles of wine and one of them Sutter Home and Woodridge and something you've never heard of,
Right.
which one are you going to buy? Like, you're not going to, and a boutique wine is going to be more expensive.
Right. Yeah.
So are you going to spend more money on something you've never tasted? So wineries depend on having the ability to do that wine tasting so that you can decide what you like. And so, even though they have the ability to sell their wine at the wine and spirit store or at grocery stores now, it's less likely. It really needs that tasting room environment. So that's why the state allows them to open these satellite locations with that. The winery license allows up to 5 satellite locations. So, and then the breweries do the same thing. So that's why Boniface has Tide House. And, so you can have that. And then the other thing, which is helpful, and again, it's us helping each other, is that with that craft winery license, you are allowed to sell Pennsylvania beer and Pennsylvania spirits.
Okay.
So it can't be, I can't sell Budweiser.
Right.
But I could sell Yingling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what we choose to sell are the really craft, Boniface, Poor Man's, Whacker, the local folks.
So your cost for having that isn't involved in the licensing, but when you stock your bar with wine, do you go buy the bottles and bring them back, or do they give you the bottles and you just pay them as you sell it, like the home base wine?
So, I mean, every satellite location does it different. Okay. So, I mean, we do it where we buy the bottles.
Now, is there more, like you guys are one of the satellite locations? Does that home winery do they use all 5 of their?
No, not yet.
Okay.
No, they have the ability to. So, and one of the things is just growing enough grapes.
Well, yeah.
So you have to have enough inventory.
You have to have the production capabilities to feed.
Yeah, and boutique wineries are so different. I get so jealous of our brewery friends because it's not like
2 weeks.
It takes 2 weeks as opposed to a whole year. Or you make the wine and it's got to sit in oak for another year.
And in today's world of immediate.
And it's not like there's a shortage of hops. They can get the ingredients to make their beer in 2 weeks anytime they want.
Yeah.
Whereas I got to wait until next year's harvest comes in. Like when you're out of the Cabernet, you're out of the Cabernet until you bottle more and stuff. So it's there's a little bit of innkeeper, wine tasting room envy between the different licenses. Same goes for a distillery, but we do love our winery. It really fits in with the bed and breakfast. It's a great amenity for our B&B guests. They can, sometimes you just do want to stay in. And then what I really love is, again, this is a historic landmark building in Ephrata. It's one of the oldest buildings, apart from the Cloister building. It's the oldest building in Ephrata. And yet locals would have never come into it. Right. They would have never enjoyed it. They would have never seen it. It wouldn't have been beloved. And what you want is, so the wine bar is helping pay to keep the building alive, but it's also got people connecting with the history of Ephrata, and the cool structure,
and locals can stop in, spend 15 minutes or 3 hours, but they get in there where they otherwise would have had to sign up and rent a room to get in.
Exactly. And so people, there are some people who are locals who come and stay with us. It's a blast. It's so much fun, but it's rare. I mean, and so a lot of people don't do that. So it definitely makes coming in and seeing the place accessible. And And again, using the grounds in the summertime, we've got this lovely courtyard. People want to be outside, especially with COVID. They feel safer outside.
Right, yeah.
You know, this weekend we're going to have this 70-degree, no humidity.
It's
going to be gorgeous.
It should be.
And then we've got live music. So, and these musicians, it's very typical for wineries. You see like the Vineyard at Grandview has wine outside. Nestle has, music. Nestle has their music series, Hershey. Something about wine and music. They just go together well. And so people enjoy that. And we do it. We've really come to be friends with our musicians. And a lot of places will close their music down in the wintertime. Ours certainly slims down because we don't have as much space to spread people out, but we do have live music all year long. So every Friday and Saturday night, and it's just from 5 to 8, so it's low key. It's low key like the business itself. It's just this cute cozy little wine bar.
So every time we've been there, my wife and I, and it's such a beautiful little bar area because you have the fireplace going, you do have a TV there that you can watch if you want, and it's wonderful. The old furniture, and it's really cool. What's interesting is when we go in there, and I can't imagine there was one time that I didn't talk to some of your guests in there that they would look. It's like, hey, are you guys local? And it's like, yeah, we're local. Where are you from? And it is a great conversation to hear where they're from and why they're so. What are you guys just hanging out, or we have a wedding to go to, or we have this, or and it's just neat to hear the stories and make the connection. It's just really cool.
And that's also the neat thing of maybe not sitting at the same table, but being able to chit chat with other guests when you're a guest at breakfast rather than staying in your room. Hey, where are you guys from? And weirdly enough, usually at some point you have something in common with them. Like whether, I got a great aunt that lives in Lancaster or whatever. I mean, no matter where you go, it seems like you run into people that live right next to you, but yet you're in California.
Well, and then the other thing that's really great about the wine bar is that on the one hand, Dave and I are working our tuchuses off. So we work a lot of hours. We don't necessarily have a life. So the cool thing is
come on,
our friends come to the B&B
all week long.
Well, we do that. We have started making a concerted effort to get out and take some time for ourselves. But some of our best friends now we've met because they came to the wine bar. So, this one couple came in and they became regulars, and now his wife is one of our musicians. And on off days, sometimes we'll go and have dinner together somewhere else and things. But when you can get your friends to come to you, it's a lot of fun.
Then you can still be there making money, but hanging out with them at the same time.
But I mean, and so the support of our neighbors. So many of us. I mean, there's another. I think us. I mean, Poor Man's, Black Forest. I mean, we're all kind of in neighborhoods. And so we get people to walk.
Well, and that is true. There is a distinct difference in the clientele between Boniface, Black Forest, you guys, and Poor Man's. It's like its own, like you say, its own little community. And not to say that nobody ever strays to one of the others, but generally speaking, it's this group's home bar. And that group has a whole different, like when I used to
a British local.
When I used to do trivia at the couple weeks before COVID, when I did it at Black Forest and Boniface, they both got full, but there was not a single soul that went to both of them. I could use the exact same questions back-to-back nights in the same town. It was weird because I thought, I'm going to have to come up with all these new questions. Nobody overlapped. It was weird. But they do have their distinct local group of people.
The only one. So Hillside is also a neighborhood one. The only one that isn't like in a neighborhood is Old Republic Distillery, but it has its own following because of Givatti's. And the coffee shop folks and trivia, which brings everybody in. You're not doing trivia?
I was feeling frustrated.
You did it at our place.
I sort of wasn't the most. I sort of vented at a waitress last night, and it got back to the owners, and I shouldn't have did it, but I was feeling frustrated, and they decided to part ways. Well, I was cut back anyway, starting in July, and so things happen, and I
Yep.
you know, I'm not proud of what I did. I was human rather than businesslike last evening after trivia, but
Aw.
it is what it is, and I apologize. And you know, I they're not wrong in doing what they're doing.
But things evolve and change. And
yeah,
sometimes if you've done something, the same thing for too long, even though it was
yeah.
a good thing,
Mhm.
like it's
Yeah.
time to try
Yeah,
something
something
different.
No, and I
stuff.
think I wish them well with whatever they
Yeah.
try, and I'll land somewhere, and you know, maybe this afternoon yet. I have a feeling, but
Of course, probably. Maybe we'll talk.
no, actually, we don't even have to talk.
We already
I think,
tried.
yeah. No, we did, and that was another case. Now there, I think it was a mutual agreement that hey, we gave this a shot, and for whatever reason, it just ain't working, and it's
Yeah.
not worth any of our efforts.
Well, our place. So one of the things with us too, again, it's that small and cozy.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like
Mhm.
I've been to bars and I love like bingo,
yeah,
but like we're just too small
Yeah.
to do
No, and-
that.
and
You know,
that
like
is-
to,
yeah,
you know, like it's
yeah.
just so you know you've got to. But I'm all about test and learn.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
you know, like I love
Yeah.
and I like watching our other local businesses in Ephrata who are doing
Yeah.
the same
Yeah,
thing.
You bring that up. That's very interesting. You know, in talking to me over at Black Forest, you know, you guys seem to all kind of collaborate. And if you have an issue or a problem, or this guest needs something specific, and
Advice.
yes, and
Well,
and so you
and we send
guys
people
all
to each
work
other.
together.
Yeah, like we're outside of our little community. You'll see, you know, like so there might be, for instance, a bed and breakfast. I don't know anywhere, Lancaster, who maybe is feeling uncertain. They're not necessarily going to. If somebody wants to go and taste wine, they're not going to send them to weather.
They
They
view
may,
you as
Right.
Because-
competition,
whereas-
as a partner in the overall business of the area.
yeah, but you know, first of all, I'm never going to try and take somebody's guest away.
Yeah.
But I think all of us in Ephrata know that about each other.
Yeah.
So Lancaster Ridge Bed and Breakfast, lovely B&B, Twin Pine Manor, you know, like all of these, you know, Black
Is Twin Pines
Forest.
still open?
Oh my God, it's great! It's
I mean,
gorgeous.
we went on a B&B tour probably, I don't know, 20 years ago. Local B&Bs, just, you know, it was an organized thing. And I, at the time, I thought, this is a neat place.
It
And I
is.
didn't even know it's still in business.
It's totally still in business, and they send us their customers. It's a gorgeous bed and breakfast. It's well run. And that's it. So my favorite thing is for other bed and breakfasts. I don't see a good bed and breakfast as a problem. I see a bad bed and breakfast as a problem.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
to give
Because,
the overall
you know, like,
concept that they
well,
made.
unlike a restaurant, suppose you go to a restaurant
Yeah.
and you have a terrible meal.
Right.
Are you going to stop going to restaurants?
No,
If you go to a bed and breakfast and you have a bad
you'll
experience,
probably go to a hotel.
you
next
will
time.
never, like, I'm
Yeah.
done with bed and
Yeah,
breakfast.
yeah.
So I love all of these wonderful bed and
Yeah.
breakfasts that are around us, and I'm happy. Hey, go and stay at
Yeah.
Twin Pine and
Yeah,
come and drink
yeah.
with me.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, and,
Yeah,
and
you know, I
so,
can,
yeah.
you know, I still get some money from drinking wine with you, and
Yeah.
I don't have to clean your room.
and we're always, I mean, it's us in Black Forest, big time. You know, because they've got a bed and breakfast with the brewery, a bed and
Mhm.
breakfast with the winery. We're
Yeah,
probably,
yeah,
you know, the
yeah.
most similar of the
Right.
B&Bs in that sense, and also both colonial buildings.
Yeah.
So, and the same thing goes, if my bed and breakfast is somehow full, like those are the first people I'm going to refer
right.
guests
Right.
to
Yeah.
and stuff. So yeah, it's a really collaborative economic environment in Ephrata.
And that's nice. That's nice.
it
that
is.
you guys work together. So many businesses don't work together. They're in competition against one another. And you know, sometimes it's not about the bottom line. It's just about, you know, making things better for people.
Yep.
And,
Yeah.
and you guys are a great example of that. Yeah.
All right. Do you have any closing,
Closing
wisdom
yeah,
you want to?
closing wisdom. All right. I'm on it. Okay, 1, try a bed and breakfast. If you're nervous about it, read Google reviews. And one way to vet them is to look for select registry bed and breakfasts, because to be a part
Yeah.
of that organization, you need to be vetted. So give it a try. It's not
yeah, it's not
like
as bad
it's
as
not
I
faulty
thought.
towers. It's not a youth hostel.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know you're gonna meet a real person who can help you discover an area in a way that a hotelier isn't really
Yeah.
set up to do.
Right.
Number 2, I would say get out and enjoy wherever you live. If somebody who's watching this is from Ephrata, get out and pretend you're a tourist for at
Right.
least one day a month. And just go and do something. And if you need ideas, go to the bed and breakfast
And-
websites
yeah.
and get some ideas. And then my third is for everybody just to support local.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
we all depend on that.
Yeah.
So we all have crazy bills to pay, and we don't have the marketing budget of Amazon or
Right,
Walmart.
right, yeah.
And
No,
so,
not
and,
everybody's.
and when you have a favorite place, tell your friends about your favorite place. Sometimes the best thing you can do to help a local business isn't just going there. I mean, that's lovely.
Right.
We'd love to have you.
Yeah.
But if, you can refer your friends or promote
Mhm.
places, I think those
Mhm.
would be the 3 takeaways.
All righty.
Try a
Very good.
B&B,
Do local stuff
do local stuff
as a tourist,
as a tourist, and
and
then
support local business.
support local
Yeah.
businesses.
go.
That's it.
Yeah.
All righty.
Thank you
Well,
for
thanks
having
for
me.
Well, we're
coming
gonna
on.
we're gonna
This
wrap
is
that up
great.
today, and like I tell every guest, you are not limited to one trip here. So if down the road you have something to talk about, whatever it is,
All right.
don't have to be bed and breakfast related.
I'll keep
Get
that in
on the
mind.
schedule.
Hey, maybe we can talk about like our adventures around the county,
You could,
like
yeah.
tourism.
Yeah.
Check out
Yeah.
the Smithton
Smithton
the
Inn,
winery,
the winery,
there,
Weathered
and,
Vineyards.
Smithton Inn and Weathered Vineyards.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
322 and Academy.
Yep. Thank you so much.
All righty. See you guys next week.
Oh my God, how long was that?
About an hour.
You're right. Time flew.
It does. Every week it does.
Yeah.